My name is Greg Statton. I am the VP of AI Solutions here at Cohesity. I've been part of the Cohesity family for the last 10 years now, which has been a lot of fun. So for those of you that don't know, Cohesity has been around for quite a while now, and we are a data security, data management solution, kind of now we can say powered with AI like everybody else wants to say. But really what that means is we built this infinitely scalable data fabric that can run individual workloads. So we're able to protect all of the enterprise applications under the sun through backup. We then re-leverage that data to ensure the integrity and resiliency of that backup data or that data last resort through a suite of security tools that can do things like data classification, threat hunting, anomaly detection, and cyber vaulting. And what's really exciting is we've then realized that this data is very valuable to the enterprise, and we've introduced a suite of tools that allows them to re-leverage it in the advent of generative AI, being able to help unlock the potential of that data, turning it into knowledge and understanding. When I'm talking about accuracy, not to go get deep into the weeds on maths, we're kind of talking about the harmonic mean between precision and recall, and those are machine learning terms we're not going to get into, but it's a very specific way to measure how accurate something is going to be. Now, a lot of the traditional means to measure this still makes sense today, but what becomes a lot harder, especially the advent of large language models and generative AI, is in order to get accurate accuracy ratings, you still need a lot of humans to be able to produce data that is evaluatable. So this is human labeled, human validated inputs so that a machine and a model can be evaluated against. And when you're talking about language models, you're talking about huge amounts of text versus the more traditional means where you're kind of looking at one word or two words or a 3-word triplet. So when you're having to measure, thousands of tokens or paragraphs of text, it does become a lot bigger, a lot more of a challenge. So I think when a lot of people are looking at evaluating generative AI content right now, they're usually doing a binary assessment. They're saying, hey, this output of the model, no matter how big or small it is either wholly right or wholly wrong. And there's a lot more nuance to that. If you think of the way humans interact and have a conversation, parts of what they're saying can be very accurate. Parts become highly suspect. And we as humans kind of are in tune to be able to pick up on those subtleties and differences. And because these language models are trained on virtually every single piece of text ever written by humankind, the models can also be a little bit more tricky when it comes to generating outputs. And so, I've done a lot of research in being able to break down large bodies of text and be able to identify areas of a generation to let the end user know, hey, some of these we can actually validate based upon external sources that have been brought in during the generation phase, or there's certain things that the model has outputted to say, hey, we don't actually have any outside evidence to support this. Maybe the human interacting with the model, maybe they should go do some extra validation, or maybe discount that and not take that as true. And so by being able to kind of break down that generation into smaller components of claims, assertions, or facts, you start to get a lot more usefulness out of every generation. Large language models are trained to be as fluent as possible. And so when you look at the model architecture, what they do is they'll take inputs, in this case text, but it could be text, video, audio, any sort of data input. And the models are created to be able to generate the most probable next new words or phrases or image, picture, video, what have you, that would continue in that sequence. And we have optimized them to pick the very most probable next word, phrase, or token in that sequence. The model doesn't know if it's right, wrong, or indifferent. So, if you look at, the sleazy auto salesman or the snake oil salesperson, they're very good with words. The con artist is very good with words, and it'll make you quickly believe what they're saying because the words sound so eloquent, or they read so eloquent, they read perfectly. These models are trained to read and sound perfectly. So it can be very dangerous if you're not doing proper evaluations on top of this. So just like you enter into any sort of relationship or interaction as a human, you want to listen for these things and use a lot of common sense and use data to validate what they're saying. So I think especially when you want to look at consuming these technologies in the enterprise, but I think the same can be told for consumer consumption of these models as well. We as an industry need to be very open and honest about how these models are evaluated, what data sets they're evaluated against. And I think the enterprises that are looking to onboard the technologies need to create and curate evaluation data sets to ensure that these models are outputting within parameters that they find acceptable. Is it okay that maybe 3 to 5% of the time there might be something that's not fully accurate? Is it okay that 15% of the time? And so it's going to be also very use case dependent. So there's going to be some areas where maybe a large language model or a generative AI solution might not be the best fit for today, but there's a whole host of use cases out there where it's going to be okay to sometimes get things wrong, as long as you know what the likelihood of getting those things wrong are. So I think, as an industry, I've seen this big kind of wave change where the models started to get a lot of hype, and people were then selling models and selling AI, which is kind of weird to me, because that's like a customer saying, yes, I'll take 2 AI, please, and a third of that AI. And enterprises don't consume things like that, products like that. They consume products to solve problems. And so it's a solution, not a bespoke, I want that model. They've got a problem that they need to solve for. And I think we need to move from this constantly looking at and evaluating the best model, the best AI suite of models or process flows, and look at like how we can wrap this as part of a solution. And one of the coolest things about generative AI models is a phrase that my boss and I have been saying quite a lot here, is generative AI will never turn a novice into an expert, but it'll make an expert far more efficient at what they're doing. So you'll never be able to go from 0 to an expert with generative AI, but if you have a foundation in that topic, it's going to allow you to become more efficient a lot faster. And so that's where the sweet spot is for insertion, and making us as knowledge workers, as enterprise executives, to be more efficient with time. So early on, when we were working on our solution, Cohesity Gaia, which leverages the data that's backed up inside of Cohesity, we were working with an early adopter customer. And this is a great story that I love to tell. They were onboarding the solution for a very specific reason, to kind of help their industry. They're a bunch of research scientists from across the globe. And while our sponsor was getting buy-in from all of the researchers, he said, "Hey, Greg, I've got an idea." He said, internally in our IT organization, when we want to roll out new products or solutions or new technologies, our infrastructure engineering group creates a whole bunch of documentation that outlines the implementation strategy and the steps in order to get this spun up in our particular environment. That gets packaged up, it goes to the operations team implements all the solution, then it goes over to the support team, who supports it long term. He said one of the most painful parts of this is 2 years or 3 years later, the support team has like a level 3 technical support request going back to the infrastructure engineer who designed this. Now, sometimes they're going to be able to have instant recall of how to answer that, and they can answer it very, very quickly, but that's very rare. More often than not, that person is in a different role, in a different organization, or maybe at a different company. So now it takes somebody else to then read, digest, summarize, and understand all that documentation. So one of the quick wins that we had at this company is we took all their IT documentation. It was already being protected by Cohesity. We enabled it for use with our generative AI application, Gaia, gave their support team access to it, and we were able to instantly reduce the average time to ticket resolution on those tickets that had to go drop down to the L3 support engineers. So this required no additional work. This was a very easy win, and we saw instant value and instant return on investment. So being able to find those solutions where you can add knowledge discovery, democratizing access to that information through generative AI, you're going to be able to get wins easy all day. So I think one of the questions I get the most when I'm talking to customers about generative AI solutions, they always want to start with, well, what's the fanciest model that I should look at doing? Or I've heard about this new agentic system. How do I get going with that? I said, those are all fun topics. Should we build this ourselves or buy something off the shelf? Because I saw on LinkedIn that I can go build this whole solution with 4 lines of Python code. And I thought, that's not going to happen. So I said, where we really need to start is at your data. Being able to get your data correct, be able to ensure that you have the data siloed in a particular area to work with. You have the right version, the right copy. That data should be used with a language model. You have the right governance model on top of that. And this is going to be the easiest way in which companies are going to be able to easily onboard into generative AI solutions to be able to get those immediate return on investments. It's a moment to kind of pause and think about the amount of resource consumption a lot of these AI tools and services are taking. I think that's something that's not talked about enough. I think if you look at a much bigger and broader scope of the amount of, and we're not talking just like GPU resources, because all those GPUs that are in those data centers require power. Now, if you're going to put all those GPUs inside of one data center, it's going to be a very large physical plant. It's going to require so much power, so much cooling. I think a lot of these places are building power plants that are designed for major metropolitan areas to power a single data center for GPUs. That's not sustainable. And I think just removing the words please and thank you is not going to be what cuts it. I think there needs to be, as an industry, we need to look at responsible resource utilization, physical resource utilization that was going to be more kind towards our planet. Being able to store and manage and maintain all of this data very efficiently is also going to reduce the load on these systems later down the line. So if you can work on a data strategy that incorporates a management platform that's able to kind of reduce that through deduplication compression, but securely through encryption and responsibly through like an erasure coded platform, you're going to be able to reduce that data footprint even further, which I think goes hand in hand with ensuring smaller resource consumption. Again, I think it's a little tongue-in-cheek to say that, stop saying please and thank you. There's just a lot more to look at it, all the way from your data storage techniques to physical plant resources as well. If you're not understanding and wrangling your data and putting it into systems where you can instantly retrieve relevant information on an on-demand fashion and use it within AI models, your competitors are. And your competitors are going to win more and more business. So again, the quicker that you can get to a data management platform and solution that efficiently stores that information, secures that information, and has it already prepped and ready for AI systems and solutions, the more well-equipped you're going to be to compete in today and tomorrow's markets. When it comes to implementation, I think we've talked a little bit about this. It starts, from a functional level. And once you've got functional buy-in in your organization, you need to focus on how to kind of tackle the massive data sprawl. We already talked about the immense scale of enterprise data globally, or data globally, let alone enterprise data globally. The vast majority of that happens to be unstructured. And some of the research that we found, up to 80% of that data tends to be unstructured, which is even harder to manage. And so you first need to identify tools and solutions that can kind of help consolidate that onto a single platform. At Cohesity, we have a data management solution that first focuses on data protection. So it automatically goes out and fetches all of that data across the enterprise and brings it onto a single scalable solution that has deduplication, compression, erasure coding, et cetera. So we've minimized the footprint of that data while still providing real-time access back to it. Once that data is siloed and you have a proper governance policy on top of that, you're able to very quickly and easily identify the individual datas or pieces of data that should be used to help solve a particular problem. And what's pretty neat in the Cohesity world, we integrated a tool what we call Cohesity Gaia, which has an end-to-end indexing pipeline, which can take that data that you've already protected, allow for administrators to individually select pieces of data or whole estates of data that are relevant to a particular problem. We create a semantic-aware index, allowing individuals to interact with that data in natural language, use it for question answering, knowledge discovery, and a whole host of other use cases, and be able to bring that into the world of generative AI. So while you can go out and kind of start building these things on your own, there are off-the-tool enterprise-grade solutions that help simplify this, allowing you to focus on solving your enterprise problem versus tinkering with what's the best model for re-ranking or embedding data at scale. So recently we completed the merger and integration of the Veritas and Cohesity estates into a single new Cohesity. And it's been a really fun experience. And when you take a step back and look at what we've done, we've taken Veritas that arguably has the most amount of enterprise data connectors available under the sun. This talks to some of even the oldest but still most prominently used databases that any financial service company is going to have under the sun, all the way up to what we have in Cohesity and some of the more modern virtualization frameworks or key value stored data sets, data stores, now under one umbrella. And what we've been spending a lot of time since day one is being able to ensure that a Cohesity system can read and access a lot of the data stored in the net backup format. And this allows a lot for us. This enables customers to stay with whatever system that they are comfortable with. They're able to kind of leave their archive data in whatever format that it already has been in. And so a lot of these companies will have 7, 10, or infinity years worth of data in a net backup format that still has a ton of value. And now once we start being able to unlock a lot of that data through the Cohesity data platform, this starts to enable some of these next generation workloads like I was talking about with Cohesity Gaia. Now I can go tap into not only the data that was backed up last week using the new integrated Cohesity Data Protect platform, but I can go talk to data that is 20 years old sitting in a Veritas archive, maybe pulled back from tape even onto the platform. And you're not going to find another solution under the sun that's going to be able to talk to hundreds of exabytes of data under management globally. From a Cohesity Gaia perspective, I'm really excited to see where we're going. I think we spent about a year and a half getting the project off the ground. We started off this endeavor bringing retrieval augmented generation to the enterprise through Cohesity Gaia, but we deployed this in our SaaS world. We did this on purpose. This gave us the ability to iterate very quickly on this new feature set, ensuring that we met with customer expectations and customer needs. Now that we've started to gain a lot more traction in this space, we also know that the majority of our customers, and now our combined customers with Veritas, their estate happens to live on-prem. So while it's neat that they can interact with their the data that's being backed up from SaaS environments, they want to be able to access that enterprise authoritative data source, which happens to live on-prem. So we spent a lot of time over the last handful of months architecting a solution that now can be a hybrid approach. A customer can then now run this in the cloud and if they want to, or as a service offering, or they can bring parts or all of this solution on-prem. So this can be on-prem within the four walls of their environment, or this can be on-prem in a customer-managed cloud environment. And what this allows them to do is it allows them to kind of own all aspects of this AI pipeline. So if they have particular models that they would like to insert, they can do that. They have the flexibility to do it. This allows also to aggregate and integrate with all of the other sources of data that they have out there. Maybe some of it happens to be in the cloud in our SaaS, some of it happens to be on-prem, and it gives them a lot more control over what data can be included, and also federates a lot of that data. So I think as we'll see the remainder of this year and into next, a lot more of the larger enterprise customers are going to be adopting Cohesity Gaia at scale because we've unlocked that on-prem data world, which I think if we look at it, of the hundreds of exabytes of data under management that we have as a combined company, the overwhelming majority of that happens to be on-prem, especially from a historical perspective. And so I think our focus going forward is always going to be around creating the most robust enterprise scale information retrieval platform for AI that's available out there. So as we continue to help unlock this data that's sitting on-prem, we also unlocked a whole new markets when it comes to generative AI in the enterprise. When we look to international markets within the EU and within EMEA as a whole, data sovereignty is a lot more important to these markets. And rightfully so. I think there's a whole host of regulations, and they're there for a good reason. And that with the added complexity of those regulations, being able to give customers the control of where these AI data pipelines, systems, and data systems sit provides an extra added tier of comfortability, and actually opens the ability for them to be able to do this as a whole. I think a lot of the companies that are building solutions in this space are wholly ignoring the complexities that are involved when gaining customer traction in Europe as a whole, and especially in Asia as well. By locking them into a SaaS-only model and locking them into maybe a US SaaS-only model, that's not tenable in these markets. And I think us at Cohesity quickly unlocking on-prem data, quickly unlocking customer choice on what models that they want to run, where this runs, allowing them to keep them within their sovereign borders is extremely critical to the success and adoption of these tools at scale.